Monster movies could be mildly diverting when we're looking to veg out in front of the TV, but it's difficult to find quality examples in the genre. Jaws and Alien come to mind, and now, thanks to Netflix, I just watched another one, Godzilla Minus One, directed by Takashi Yamazaki, an artistic film that takes place in post-World War II Japan. This film won the Academy Award for visual effects. Netflix is showing the film in two versions, one in color, one in black and white, which could be an homage to the original Godzilla, a black and white film from 1954. The protagonist of Godzilla Minus One is Koichi, a kamikaze pilot whose airplane malfunctioned, it seems. Now, he lands at an airfield on Odo Island for repairs, but the mechanics don't find any problems. It appears that he just didn't want to die. Now, this film is very critical of the Empire of Japan during the war. The soldiers observe that ejection seats are fundamental to any aircraft, but the soldiers here were expendable, so they didn't get ejection seats. It's nighttime on Odo Island when Godzilla arrives. He's about the size of a T-Rex at this point. The mechanic, Tachibana, tells Koichi to get in his plane and start firing the guns. Now, he gets in the plane, but when Godzilla looks at him, he freezes. Nearly everybody is killed. Koichi goes home to Tokyo, which was utterly destroyed in the air raids. His parents are dead. He meets a young woman, Noriko, who lost her parents. Now, she has a baby girl with her. The baby's mother died and gave her to Noriko for safekeeping. So they become a makeshift family. They're assisted by a neighbor whose own children were killed in the air raids. She blames Koichi for being a coward and not dying in a kamikaze plane. Koichi has recurring nightmares about Godzilla and the people who died because he didn't kill it when he had the chance. Koichi finds a job on a minesweeper, a small creaky ship that hunts for unexploded mines off the coast of Japan. Here the film owes a debt to Jaws. Now, the shark hunters in that film were three guys on a tiny boat. Tiny compared to the shark. Megalodon, huge predator. Now, here the minesweeper is too small to be sweeping for mines, let alone hunting Godzilla, but it's required to do so because the U.S. won't be sending assistance. The U.S. is battling the Soviet Union at the time and can't spare any troops. The U.S. also conducted nuclear tests. The radiation caused Godzilla to grow to gargantuan size and breathe fire, but it's thermonuclear fire. Godzilla is on a path to the mainland. The tiny minesweeper is supposed to stall Godzilla until a heavy cruiser arrives. The crew is supposed to use the mines they've scavenged and not tell anybody what they're doing. The crew members despair about the gag order and wonder if their country will ever change, if it can ever change. Godzilla has already demolished a U.S. destroyer. It heads for the minesweeper, which only has two unexploded mines. They drop the first one, no damage. The second mine lodges in Godzilla's mouth, which injures the creature, but its flesh regenerates. Now, Godzilla rises up out of the sea and is struck by weapons fire from the heavy cruiser, which has just arrived. But Godzilla attacks and destroys the cruiser. Now, these scenes on the minesweeper are beautiful to watch. Noriko has found a job in the city of Ginza, which was rebuilt after the war, but Godzilla arrives and destroys the city. Now, the visual effects here show why this film was Oscar-worthy. These are classic scenes for the Godzilla franchise, the monster laying waste to everything in its path, but these scenes are framed like paintings. Now, the story here has emotional impact as well. Noriko is lost in the attack in the city of Ginza. The crew of the minesweeper yell at Koichi because he didn't marry her when he had the chance. A civilian force tries to stop Godzilla. They volunteer because they want to fight, not in a hopeless cause, not for war, but for their families, for a life worth living. Koichi joins the effort and reconnects with Tachibana, who fixes up an experimental fighter plane and loads it with explosives. Koichi tells him, "The war is not over for me yet, or for you." He intends to take his kamikaze flight at last. The civilian volunteers board two destroyers. They plan to bind Godzilla with ropes and sink it to the bottom of the ocean where the pressure will crush it to death. Now, failing that, Godzilla will be brought to the surface quickly and be destroyed by the decompression, they hope. Now, Koichi's suicide flight is not part of the plan. That's his own plan. He makes provisions for his adopted daughter, Akiko. He's ready to die. The monster in this film is relentless, seemingly indestructible. Whenever it attacks, it leaves chunks of its flesh around, infected with radiation, and the disaster areas in its wake are poisoned by the radiation. The civilians manage to sink Godzilla to the bottom of the ocean, but the pressure doesn't kill it. A bunch of tugboats arrive to help bring Godzilla to the surface. Koichi flies the plane right into its mouth. The creature's head explodes and its body crumbles as thermonuclear rays leak out. Koichi survives. Tachibana had installed an ejection seat. His government during the war refused to do it, but he's a civilian mechanic now. We get a flashback of Tachibana telling his friend Koichi, "Live. Do what you need to do, but live." Now, Koichi parachutes to safety. When he arrives at port, he receives a telegram. He takes Akiko to the hospital, where they're reunited with Noriko. She survived the attack by Godzilla in the city of Ginza. As they embrace, we see she has a neck injury, which is infected with radiation. The injury seems to be active and growing worse. The final scene shows a chunk of Godzilla's flesh sinking into the ocean, where it begins to regenerate. The filmmakers have said that the title, Godzilla Minus One, refers to Japan being at its lowest point after World War II. At zero, so to speak. But the appearance of Godzilla pushes them down even further, and we see that most clearly in the protagonist, Koichi, whose emotional journey out of grief and trauma is complicated by a different type of threat. The Godzilla franchise began in the 1950s and was understood to symbolize the horrors of nuclear war for the Japanese people. There's been controversy about that. Some critics accuse the filmmakers of ignoring Japanese actions during the war, but this film discusses the torment of the Japanese people who were treated as cannon fodder by their government. Kamikaze pilots, armored tanks with insufficient armor, poor supply chains leading to disease and starvation, which caused the greatest number of deaths. Now, those conditions are presented as a deliberate choice by the government to economize at the expense of human life. The civilian force shown in the film aims to sacrifice no lives at all. Now, credit the director of Godzilla Minus One for studying Jaws and building an homage to that film within his own film. This is a brilliant director. I have no concerns about his talent or his future, and I'll be looking forward to what he does next. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.